My name is Evelyn Carter, and last December my daughter-in-law told me I could stay home for Christmas. She said it gently, as if she were sparing me from something unpleasant. It's just easier this year. Evelyn, we'll be at my mom's, but we'll call you, all right? I was standing at my kitchen counter, wrapping a toy train for my grandson. The gold paper crinkled under my fingers. The tape tore with a sharp little hiss, the sound far too loud in the quiet kitchen. I smiled into the phone because that's what polite women my age do. When the call ended, the silence in the house felt heavier than the snow outside. The tree in the corner blinked cheerfully to no one. Robert's old chair still sat by the window, empty for 6 years now. I whispered his name once, just to hear a voice. I walked to the sink, washed my hands, and looked out at the frost climbing the glass. I'd spent so many holidays making everything perfect for everyone else. Now, with one sentence, I'd been written out of the script. That night, instead of crying, I opened my laptop. A headline read, "Christmas Markets of Europe, Tours for Seniors." The photos glowed: Vienna, Salzburg, Lucerne, candles, snow, music. I could almost smell the cinnamon. Without thinking, I clicked book. Now. When the form asked for an emergency contact, I started to type Robert's name, then stopped. The cursor blinked. Patient. Waiting. I left it blank. If there was no chair for me at their table, I'd find my own somewhere with candles and strangers, and maybe a little bit of magic left for women who'd been told to stay home. The next morning, frost glazed the window like lace, and the sun was just a pale rumor behind the clouds. I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold twice already. The house was quiet except for the furnace sighing through the vents. My phone buzzed. Michael's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, Mom," he began, too cheerful for someone who felt guilty. "I wanted to check in about last night. Lena didn't mean to sound—" He paused, searching for a word that would make rejection sound polite. "Clear?" I offered. He sighed. "Yeah, she's worried about her mom. Donna's been dizzy lately, and the kids, you know how they get on long drives. It's just easier this way." "Easier for who? Michael?" I asked, though I kept my voice soft. I wasn't angry, just tired of being the one who made everything easier. "For everyone," he said, then winced. "We'll come up after New Year's. Maybe we can do something small." "I'll be fine," I said, cutting in gently. "You don't have to rearrange anything." He hesitated. "You sure?" "I'm sure," I said. "Actually, I'm going to try something new this year." "New?" "I booked a Christmas market tour. Europe, Vienna, Salzburg, maybe Switzerland." He blinked, caught between concern and surprise. "Mom, that's... Wow. When?" "Next week." "Next week?" He laughed softly, incredulous. "That's fast." "Life's fast, sweetheart," I said. "Might as well keep up." He promised to drive me to the airport and told me he was proud of me, though it sounded like a line he'd borrowed from a Hallmark card. Still, it landed kindly. After we hung up, I sat for a long time in the kitchen. The pie dish from yesterday still sat in the sink, a rim of sugar hardened along its edge. I filled it with hot water and watched the steam climb. The smallest acts, washing, folding, deciding, had become my rituals of control. Later, I opened my laptop again to print my itinerary. The printer sputtered and coughed out each page like it needed convincing. I clipped them together and stuck a small yellow Post-it on the front. "You did this?" By noon, I was walking the aisles of the local travel store, asking the clerk which adapter worked in Austria. She was young enough to be my granddaughter, with bright nails and a ring on every finger. When I told her I hadn't been abroad since 1985, she grinned. "Then this is overdue," she said. That night, I pulled my old suitcase from the closet. Robert's initials, RC, were still faintly scratched near the handle. He'd always insisted good luggage was a moral choice. "If you take care of it, it'll take care of you," he used to say. I ran a hand over the leather and smiled. "You were right, old man." I packed with the kind of care people reserve for sacred things. 2 sweaters, a wool coat, the red scarf I bought the winter Robert got sick, and the travel-size bottle of my favorite perfume, which I almost never used anymore. When I zipped the suitcase shut, I felt something shift inside me, an ache loosening, like a knot coming undone. At dinner, I made myself chicken soup and poured a small glass of wine, though I wasn't celebrating anything yet. Snow began to fall outside, slow and deliberate. It softened the world into silence. For a moment, I wondered what Lena's kitchen looked like that night, if her mother was sitting at the table while she wrapped gifts, if my grandchildren were running through the hall in their pajamas. I hoped so. I hoped it was beautiful for them. The next day, I stopped by the bank to pick up some euros. The teller, a man my age with a Santa tie, smiled when I told him I was traveling alone. "You'd be surprised how many people your age do," he said. "It's the best time. You've got the stories to appreciate it." That line stayed with me, stories to appreciate it. I wondered how many of mine I'd left untold because I thought no one wanted to hear them anymore. That evening, I called Michael again, just to make sure he knew my flight details. He answered from the living room. I could hear cartoons in the background. "Hey, Mom, you packed yet?" "Almost. I'm still sorry," he said. "Don't be," I told him. "This isn't a punishment. It's just something I need to do." He was quiet for a moment. "I love you." "I know," I said. "And I love you too." When we hung up, I turned off the lights one by one, leaving only the glow of the Christmas tree. It looked strange, festive for no audience. I walked over and touched one of the ornaments, a painted wooden bird Robert bought in Germany when Michael was born. It had a crack in its tail now, but it still balanced on the branch like it belonged there. The night before my flight, I printed my boarding pass and filled out the travel insurance form online. When I reached the box labeled "Emergency Contact," my fingers hovered over the keyboard. For years, I'd written Robert Carter without thinking. Even after he was gone, it had become a reflex, a superstition. This time, I typed Michael Carter, then stopped, backspaced, and left it blank. The cursor blinked at me like a heartbeat. I realized I didn't need anyone listed, not because no one cared, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else to claim responsibility for me. I hit submit and felt a quiet click inside my chest, like a lock turning open. The morning of the flight, Michael arrived early with coffee and a bag of airport snacks. He insisted on carrying my suitcase even though I told him I was perfectly capable. When he hugged me goodbye at the gate, he said, "Text me when you land, okay?" "I will," I promised. As I walked towards security, I glanced back once. He was still standing there, watching until I disappeared behind the line of travelers. On the plane, I settled by the window. The wing cut through the clouds, and Madison shrank beneath me. Snow, rooftops, a town that had held me too gently for too long. I whispered, "See you soon, Robert." Though I wasn't sure where I thought he was listening from, then I closed my eyes and let the engines carry me toward the unknown. For the first time in 6 Christmases, I wasn't waiting for an invitation. I was answering one life had sent without words. Vienna greeted me with a hush of snow and bells. Even the air felt festive, carrying the scent of roasted nuts and cinnamon through narrow cobbled streets. Our tour bus rumbled past rows of cream-colored buildings trimmed with lights, every window a small celebration. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and watched the city glow like a promise. At the hotel, a cheerful guide named Claudia handed out maps and told us to meet in the lobby for a short walk to the nearest Christmas market. My room overlooked a square strung with garlands. I unpacked, tied my red scarf, and stepped into the evening alone. The market shimmered like something out of a memory I hadn't earned. Carousels spinning, violins playing, the smell of sugar and pine everywhere. I bought a small mug of glühwein, its heat settling deep in my chest, and wandered among the stalls. Children in wool hats ran between their parents, clutching gingerbread hearts. A choir sang from the church steps, voices silver in the air. I paused to admire a table of carved wooden angels. When I turned, my boot caught an icy patch, and before I could fall, a steady hand gripped my arm. "Careful," a man said, his voice low and amused. It was the man from the airplane, the one who had read quietly under the cabin light. He still held my arm, warm even through his glove. "Seems I can't go anywhere without making an entrance," I said. He laughed. "Graham Whitaker." He introduced himself. "Seattle. Apparently assigned to keep you upright." "Evelyn Carter," I replied. "Madison, Wisconsin, apparently prone to falling at scenic locations." The ice cracked under our feet as we both laughed, and for a moment, I forgot to feel alone. We walked together through the stalls, talking easily about things that didn't matter. How the lights here felt softer than at home, how even the cold seemed polite. He told me he'd retired from Boeing, that he'd lost his wife, Nora, last year. This trip had been hers to plan. "She loved Christmas," he said, looking past the crowd. "I thought maybe I'd see what she saw in it." We ended the evening at a small cafe tucked behind the market. The air inside smelled of butter and cloves. We each ordered soup and schnitzel, and when the check came, he tried to pay for both. I shook my head. "I'm perfectly capable of buying my own dinner." He smiled, not offended. "Then I'll get the coffee." "Deal," I said. We talked until the street outside emptied and the waitress began stacking chairs. I told him about Robert, about his quiet humor, how he used to hum Christmas carols off-key just to make me laugh. Graham listened without interrupting, his hands folded around his cup as if he were holding a candle. Back at the hotel, we said goodnight in the lobby. "See you tomorrow. Evelyn," he said, as if it were certain. And somehow, I believed him. The next morning, our group took a train to Salzburg. The landscape rolled past, white fields, gray barns, a river moving like melted glass. I sat beside Graham, and we shared headphones, listening to a playlist he said Nora had made for traveling. The songs were old-fashioned, full of trumpets and hope. When the train curved, our reflections overlapped in the window, two faces that had known the long shape of missing someone. Salzburg was a fairy tale of snow and music. Street performers played violins near the fountains, and bakeries displayed strudels dusted with sugar so thick they looked like fresh snow. That evening, we climbed a hill to the fortress above the city. I stopped halfway, catching my breath, laughing at myself. Graham offered his arm. "I'm fine," I said. "I know," he replied, "but maybe it's easier with company." At the top, the city spread below us, lights scattered like spilled jewels. We stood without speaking. The silence was companionable, not heavy. Later, in a small cafe, I opened my wallet to pay for coffee, and a photograph slipped out. Robert in his Air Force jacket, grin cocked to one side. Graham reached for it, then froze. "May I?" he asked. I nodded. He studied the picture for a long moment. "Your husband was Air Force?" "Yes, stationed in Germany in the late 70s. A strange expression crossed his face, equal parts surprise and recognition. My brother, Frank, worked maintenance for the 435th Air Wing back then. He used to write home about a guy named Robert Carter. Said he wrote a humor column in the base newsletter, always cracking jokes about bad coffee and frozen engines. I stared at him, my throat suddenly tight. That sounds exactly like my Robert. Well, he said softly, setting the photo down, small world, or maybe a generous one. For a long while, we sat in quiet awe. I pictured Robert at 25, writing jokes to make the others laugh, never knowing decades later his name would echo between two strangers in a cafe across the ocean. When we stepped back outside, snow had begun again, light as ash. Graham pulled a small tin from his pocket, a red one with a painted Santa. "Here," he said, pressing it into my hands. "For your grandchildren. Fill it with cookies, or secrets, or whatever magic grandmothers keep." The tin was cold, the hinge slightly loose. I laughed. "You carry gifts for strangers often." "Only when it feels like the right story," he said. Back at the hotel, I set the tin on the bedside table. Its color glowed under the lamp. I thought of Robert, of how he'd always said stories were the only luggage worth collecting. Maybe he was right. The final day took us to Lucerne. The lake there looked like a mirror dropped from heaven, edges still intact. We crossed the old wooden bridge lined with paintings, and I caught myself thinking how life was a series of crossings, each one narrower, but somehow more precious. At a bakery near the bridge, Graham insisted on buying pastries for the road. I teased him that he was stocking up for an apocalypse. He shrugged. "If the world ends, at least I'll have butter and sugar." That night, as I packed, I found the red tin again. I wrapped it carefully in a sweater so it wouldn't dent and slipped Robert's photograph beside it. Before turning off the light, I whispered, "I met someone who remembers you." The words didn't hurt. They felt like a benediction. When I lay down, the snow outside thickened, softening the world until it was all white and forgiving. I closed my eyes knowing tomorrow I'd be heading home, not the same woman who left, but one who had finally remembered how to live her own story. The flight home felt shorter, though maybe that was just the comfort of direction. I watched the map on the seat screen crawl west over the ocean and thought about how distance could both wound and heal, depending on which way you traveled. When the plane landed in Chicago, I switched my phone back on. There was a text from Michael waiting. "Can't wait to see you." At the Madison airport, he was waiting near baggage claim, still in his work jacket, looking exactly like the little boy who used to wait by the school door for me to pick him up. When he saw me, his face lit with relief. "Mom," he said, hugging me tight. "You look different, different." "I feel good," I said, smiling. Tired, but in the right way. He carried my suitcase to the car, asking questions before he could stop himself. What I'd seen, if it was safe, whether I'd eaten enough. I told him everything in small brushstrokes, the markets, the snow, the music, the people. I didn't tell him about Graham, not yet. When we reached the house, I turned the key and stepped inside. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and clean laundry. Home, but new somehow, as if it had been waiting for me to walk back in as this version of myself. Michael hovered while I unpacked the essentials. "Mom," he said finally, "I've been thinking about Christmas." I paused, folding a sweater. "Oh?" "I was wrong," he said simply. "We both were." I let easy become an excuse. Lena's been feeling terrible about it too. She wanted to call you but didn't know what to say. Sometimes sorry needs a little time to find its words," I said softly. He nodded, his jaw tight. "I should have asked you how you felt instead of assuming you'd understand. I thought I was keeping peace." Turns out, I just made quiet. I smiled at that, the accuracy of it. Quiet isn't always peace, sweetheart. But you're asking now, and that's what matters. He took a breath. Next year, I want Christmas here, at your house, all of us. If that's okay. It's more than okay, I said. But let's make it official. Write it on the calendar before the year gets any ideas. He laughed, tension easing from his shoulders. Deal. That evening, after he left, Lena called. Her voice was tentative, careful. Evelyn, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry about how I said things. My mom's been better, and I realized how it must have sounded when I told you to stay home. Her honesty touched me. Thank you, Lena, I said. You didn't mean to hurt me, but you did. And that's okay. We all get selfish when we're scared. I was scared, she admitted. And tired, I thought one Christmas wouldn't matter. They all matter, I said gently. But it's not about guilt, it's about understanding. Let's plan next year together, okay? I don't want to be the backup family, and I don't want you to feel trapped either. Deal, she said, her voice steadier now. And I saw your photos. The markets looked amazing. They were, I said, glancing at the red tin now resting on my counter. A friend I met gave the kids something. You'll see. After we hung up, I baked chicken pot pie. The smell filled the house, rich and buttery, the way it used to when Robert was alive. When Michael dropped by later to pick up the leftovers, we ate together at the kitchen table. He asked about the trip again, and this time I told him about Graham, how we'd met, what we'd talked about, how he'd known Robert's name through his brother. Michael smiled. That sounds right, he said, like the universe lined up a small kindness. Exactly, I said. It reminded me that love doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. After he left, I carried the red tin to the living room. I placed it beside Robert's photograph on the shelf. The tin caught the lamplight and gleamed softly, its painted Santa smiling as if he knew something I didn't. I touched the photo, then the tin. He remembered you, I whispered. Days passed, quiet and full. Lena texted pictures of the kids building a lopsided snowman. I answered with a photo of the frozen lake near my house, sunlight breaking through like forgiveness. Every morning felt a little lighter, every evening a little warmer. In February, a postcard arrived from Seattle, just a picture of snow-covered mountains and a line in neat handwriting. Travel safe inside yourself too. G. I pinned it to the fridge next to the grocery list. By spring, the ache had softened into something gentler. I started volunteering at the library twice a week, reading to children. Some days I'd look up from a picture book and see Robert's humor in the faces of strangers, or Graham's quiet patience, or my own courage reflected back at me. In June, Michael sent a calendar invite titled Christmas at Mom's. I clicked accept and smiled at the absurd modern beauty of scheduling love. When December returned, the air outside smelled like snow again. I pulled out the red tin, filled it with cookies and peppermint bark, and thought about how one, "You can stay home," had led me everywhere I needed to go. By the time December rolled around again, the world outside my window was white and waiting. Michael had already strung lights along my porch, the kind that blinked slow and calm, like the pulse of a resting heart. Inside, the tree stood in the corner, trimmed with the same ornaments Robert and I had collected over the years. The red tin sat beneath it, filled with cookies, its paint a little faded from curious hands. When Graham's knock came that evening, I wasn't surprised. He'd flown in from Seattle, carrying a glass ornament etched with the word peace. We hung it together on the highest branch. It caught the firelight and scattered it across the room like shards of morning. The table filled quickly, Michael carving the turkey, Lena setting out cider, Donna laughing with the children. The air shimmered with warmth and forgiveness, the kind that doesn't erase the past but folds it gently into the present. As I watched everyone pass plates and stories, Graham caught my eye and smiled. They once told me I could stay home, and I did, only this time. Home was full of laughter, light, and the quiet knowing that I had chosen it myself